How many times you have started hours-long podcast and never able to finish, and when you went back, you find it difficult to connect with podcast. To avoid that, please subscribe to most advanced featured and accurate channel Quick Podcast Summaries. Trump had said that he would bring the war to a close in the first hours after becoming president. However, Daniel Davis notes that Trump would have had a much more difficult position to bring that to fruition due to the horrific decisions made by the outgoing administration. The conversation then shifts to the Minsk agreements, which Davis explains were never implemented by the Ukrainian side. The agreements had been signed by Russia, France, Germany, and Ukraine, and included provisions for political autonomy and protections for Russian-speaking people in eastern Ukraine. However, the Ukrainian side failed to implement these provisions, and instead continued to push for NATO membership. Davis argues that the war could have been avoided if the Minsk agreements had been implemented. He notes that the agreements did not include NATO membership for Ukraine, and that Russia's concerns about NATO expansion were legitimate. The conversation then turns to the topic of Crimea, which Davis explains was historically part of Russia. Davis argues that the annexation of Crimea was a response to the coup in Ukraine, which was supported by the US and other Western countries.
Tucker Carlson asks Davis why Crimea is a no-go for the US and other Western countries.
Davis explains that Crimea is a strategic location for Russia, and that the US and other Western countries have been trying to undermine Russia's influence in the region. He notes that the US and other Western countries have been supporting the Ukrainian government, which has been pushing for NATO membership, and has been involved in a conflict with Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine. The conversation then turns to the topic of the Istanbul negotiations, which Davis notes were shut down by Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, acting on behalf of the Biden administration. Davis argues that the US and other Western countries have been unwilling to negotiate with Russia, and that this has led to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. However, Davis argues that the US and other Western countries have been unwilling to take advantage of these opportunities, and that this has led to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Davis notes that the US and other Western countries have been providing military aid to Ukraine, but that this has not been enough to change the outcome of the conflict. He argues that the US and other Western countries should be pushing for a negotiated settlement, rather than continuing to support the Ukrainian government's military efforts. If you want to listen to the complete summary, please subscribe to Quick Podcast Summaries on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for less than the price of candy in most places, and you can save an average of 15 to 20 hours per week of your precious time. It's a great way to stay informed while saving time.